Hey folks, welcome to this video in the Profile Builder series. We'll take a look at a new feature called checklists. Now for many years, Rhapsody has supported GuideMes. These are essentially cheat sheets embedded into the Rhapsody UI to guide users in performing specific modelling tasks. GuideMes are supported by the Profile Builder. We can reverse engineer existing ones, we can model them, and of course generate them. And we covered GuideMes in an earlier video. Now, whilst they are very useful, GuideMes are also quite limited. There is very little support for formatting, and no support at all for embedding useful things like videos or graphics. They also don't support the idea of launching automation helpers directly from that guide. Checklists support all of that and more. Let's start with an example of a generated checklist, and then we'll see how we can model and generate them using the Profile Builder. Let's create a new project using Profile Builder as the project type. Now notice that the new project automatically opens the Getting Started checklist for the Profile Builder over here on the right. Now, if that gets closed, I can always reopen it from the Welcome page here, or I can use the Profile Builder Help menu to open that checklist, or indeed any of the other Profile Builder checklists. Now, unlike GuideMes, which use a proprietary XML-based format, checklists are pure HTML. I'm using Rhapsody 10 here, which supports embedding web pages into the Rhapsody UI, so we can see the checklist docked in Rhapsody's main window. But don't worry, if you're using Rhapsody 9 or earlier, you can still open the checklist, but it will be in an external web browser rather than this one that's embedded into Rhapsody. Now, there are a wide range of concepts supported in checklists. For example, there are several different kinds of collapsible sections that can contain content. Images and other media may be embedded anywhere in that content, and that can be local files or it can be remote URLs. Checklists can link to other checklists. For example, here in Getting Started, we might be creating a new profile, or we might be taking over the maintenance of an existing one. Let's choose Getting Started with a new profile. Now, that checklist has an embedded video. In fact, it's the introduction video from this very YouTube playlist. Now, if we wanted it larger, we could undock the window, we could resize it, we could set the video to play full screen and so on. But for now, we'll move on. Next, we have check items. Now, those are also expandable sections, but they have their own automation. They have a Done button. When we click that button, that check item is collapsed, its text gets a strike through, and the next check item is opened. When we reach the last check in a section, that section is collapsed and checked off, and then the next section is expanded. Now, because this is a web browser, we can always right-click inside this window and click back to go back to a previous checklist, or we can refresh if we want, maybe to refresh the page and clear all of our strike-throughs. Next, we have helper support. Checklists support clickable buttons that trigger some automation in Rhapsody, which of course might be your own helpers. But you will need either the Profile Builder or the Rhapsody Power Pack for that feature, both of which listen for those requests from the HTML pages and then ask Rhapsody to run the specified helper. Here, for example, when I'm getting started building a profile, I could invoke the helper that creates a profile for me in the usual way, by right-clicking in the model browser and then running the helper from the appropriate menu. Or I can simply click this button right here in the checklist, which is a little more convenient. Now, there are a bunch of other concepts in checklists, but for now, let's go ahead and actually create our own. So let's close this checklist and we'll model one. To begin with, Let's click Add New and we'll select Checklist Package. Now, just like similar containers in the profile builder, we can make this one the root container for a profile, so everything gets generated into the right place in the file system for that profile. Or we can manually choose where to generate the files using the path to folder tag. In this case, let's set it as the root package for our profile. Now, I can create child checklist packages to organize my content, but in this simple example, I'll just put everything in the root, starting with this checklist diagram. Okay, now for the actual checklist. Let's call it Getting Started, which will also be the name of the generated HTML file. Now we can give that a description right here in the Rhapsody features window. Let's just give that some text, maybe welcome to my profile. Now this is rich text, so any formatting you apply here in the description will carry over into the generated checklist. Now, of course, you don't have to use Rhapsody's editor. You can set a property in Rhapsody to have it invoke any external editor and use that instead. For advanced formatting, checklists also support the definition and application of CSS styles, which you can also model. But for now, let's generate our checklist and open it so we can see the result. Okay, now let's add some sections. Let's add 2 sections, section 1 and section 2. And let's add some text again into the description of section 1. To add structure, we use this has item relationship. And of course, reordering those relationships also reorders the generated content. Let's generate it, and then we can right-click inside the checklist window and select Refresh to see the new content. Now let's add a couple of check items. So let's have check 1 and check 2. Let's also add an image to our checklist. We do that using an image item. And I'll use another helper to browse for an image file on the hard drive. So here in C demo data, I've got a file called minion.jpg. We'll use that one. And then we can use the same has item relationship to connect them. Now I could continue manually generating, but as with other artifacts in the profile builder, I can set it to auto-generate. Here in the project properties, I'll switch to the profile builder perspective. And there on the auto generation page, I'll select auto generate checklists on save. Now I can simply save with Control S, and that will also then generate the new content. Once again, I'll refresh the page, and then I can expand the sections and the checks, and I can see all that new content inside my checklist. One last thing, let's add a HTML item. Now for these items, we can either add HTML directly into the description, or we can point the item at an existing local HTML file using a tag. Now, I'll use another helper to set that tag to a HTML file on my hard drive. Again, that's in C demo data. I've got a file called googlepychart.html. Now that has some content that I literally copied and pasted directly from one of the sample Google charts on Google's developer website. Then I'll add that into section 2 using a has item relationship. Once again, Control S to save and generate the content. And then again, I can refresh the page. And if I expand section 2, it now has a pie chart in it. Now that's how quickly and easily we can create checklists to help guide our users in their modeling activities. Well, that's it for this video. Do subscribe to the playlist if you want to be kept up to date with new enhancements like these. But for now, I'm Andy Lapping, and this is the Profile Builder.